Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of the Golden Age. This is our series of Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports, and this one it's a 2,000 point battle that is fought between my friend Scream of the Emo with his housebound Koss Vampire Counts army versus my Fell-Hold Nations of the Dwarves. So we're throwing it down at 2,000 points. I'm pretty excited for this one because I've always wanted to see how my army stacks up against Vampire Counts. So we're going to be playing at 2,000 points real quick. We're going to play some background music real fast. If you want to see exactly what each of us is bringing for our armies, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Balor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Alright, so the scenario that we're playing for this one is Battle Line. It is the most typical game of Warhammer that exists. It has standard deployment rules as well as standard victory conditions. As you can see, we're playing on a 4x6 table with like some towns and some ruins and things on it. So that being said, let's go directly to the battle plan for this one. And here's an overhead shot of the entire battlefield. As you can see, we're playing on a 4x6 table, and I'm deployed on the near side of the table. My opponent is deployed on the far side of the table. And as you can see here, there's actually a lot of terrain on this one, a lot of sight blocking terrain, so it's kind of hard for my gunline unit to kind of castle up in the flanks. I have a river in the right hand side with a forest. At the same time, I have a barn with some fortifications there, those spikes, as you can see on the left hand side. So because of that, castling up on one table edge to defend my flank isn't really going to work out for me. However, there is a lot of terrain on my flank, so hopefully that will help kind of protect me. So I decided to deploy right in the middle of my deployment zone. And as you see, I've gone for like a curved type of situation, so that way I have a good field of fire and catch my opponent in crossfires. As you can see, I got my 2 missile troops on my flanks, I got my war machines scattered throughout my main battle lines, and I have my huge unit of warriors right in the middle of my battle line. And just like always, I am playing a gun line list for dwarves, so my plan is to have my opponent advance across the battlefield. I'll shoot him to pieces as he does, and hopefully engage him in close combat with a countercharge and destroy his military forces. It's a pretty simple tactic. My friend is playing Vampire Counts, so it behooves him to come towards me, so it kind of works out in my favor in that case. And that's pretty much the battle plan on this one. So with the battle plan over with, we go directly to deployment. Starting off with Clan Izmir, the Vengeful Ones on the left-hand side. That is a unit of 18 Dwarf Quarrelers with full command. Those guys are carrying Dwarf Crossbows as well as carrying great weapons. They don't have shields because they really don't need them. So that's where my Quarrelers are deployed on my left-hand flank. In my center, I have Clan Roadstalker, which is a unit of 37 Dwarf Warriors with hand weapons and shields, heavy armor. They also have full command as well. In that unit, I also have my characters. I have Lord Ivar Bodison, the Lord of Fallen Holds. He is my Dwarf Lord who's mounted on shield bearers. He's got a rune of what's it called? The rune of parrying, so that way it's a -1 to hit against him in close combat. He's on shield bearers, like I said. He's got runes of iron and fortitude as well to give him additional bonuses for his wounds as well as his toughness. He's a very tanky, kind of like an invincible, you can't kill me type dwarf build. In that unit, I also have my Ragnar the Spellbreaker, my Runesmith with his rune of spellbreaking. I also have Yorick Shadow Shield, my Thane, who's got the Master Rune of Valyala, carrying on his standard bearer. He's also on Oathstone. He also carries a great weapon as well. And right behind them, I have the Remember. That's my Grudge Thrower with a Rune of Penetration. On the right-hand side is my Cannon that has a Rune of Burning. That is the Sorrows of Eld. And finally, on my right hand side, that is Clan Helheim, the Fallen of the Dragonbacks. That is a unit of 17 Dwarf Thunderers armed with dwarf handguns, hand weapons, as well as shield. And that unit is also my other character, Grim Borlaxson, the special character engineer. He's located in the upper right hand corner of that unit. And then right next to on the right hand side, that is the Decemberist of Winter's Past. That is my organ gun with a rune of accuracy hooked up to that one. So that's my main killer for my army. And when I rolled for my Ancestral Grudge, I rolled a 5, so that means everybody in my army has hatred towards the vampire counts, which is really going to be helpful for psychology tests as well as for close combat tests, so that part is kind of nice as well. So with deployment done for the dwarves, you go across the battlefield to the vampire counts. And starting on the left-hand flank for the vampire counts, my friend Scream the Emo has the Walking Dead of San Reme, which is a unit of 20 zombies. In that unit, he's also got his level 4 Necromancer, Sinister Jeffrey, who's carrying the, I believe he's carrying the lore of Undeath. He also has Creepy Timothy, which is a level 2 Necromancer who has the lore of Vampires. And that makes up my friend's left-hand flank. Making up the center of his army is the House of Balefire, which is a unit of 49 Crypt Ghouls with a Crypt Gas included in there. Also, he has his General Marduk von Koss. He's also located in that unit as well. He's a Strigoi Ghoul King. He's got the Curse of the Revenant as well as Aura of Dark Majesty, so he gets bonuses to his Death Shriek ability because he's carrying Scab's Wrath. He's also got the Dragonbane Gem, so that way he's not flammable, and he's carrying the Scab's Wrath weapon, which gives him Devastating Charge, also flaming attacks, plus a Death Shriek ability, which is absolutely terrifying. And then right behind him is the Calliope of Chaos. That is my opponent's Mortis engine with a Blasphemous Tome upgrade. And finally, making my opponent's right hand side is the Ravenous. That's a unit of 6 Crypt Horrors with a Crypt, I believe, a Gaunt. This is what he's called. He's like the champion for that unit. And then right behind him is Volkar, the Beast of Blutfold, which is his Terrorgeist. And that makes it the deployment for this one. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and we roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so we go directly to the top at turn number 1, and my friend Scream the Emo won the initiative on this one, so he gets to go first. This photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see, he just starts advancing as quickly as he possibly can towards my army. He does try to roll off for his reliquary that he has for his what you call his Mortis engine. I think he only gets like 4-inch range on that, so because of that, he doesn't really impact anybody in terms of hitting me with his Dark Wave or also giving bonuses for regen, so nothing much happens there. As you can see, he marches up his zombies over the left-hand side to that standing stone, and as well as moving up his ghouls right between those two standing stones. By doing that, he protects his army from my cannons, as well as from my thunderers, as well as from my organ guns. So I won't be able to target his crypt ghouls because he's behind those two standing stones, which is actually a pretty good idea. He is, forced to have to worry about my quarrelers as well as my my catapults, but at the same time though, not everything's perfect. But he does mitigate my huge killing units as well. At the same time, he also sneaks up the Calliope of Chaos behind that standing stone as well, so it pretty much protects it from the same artillery fire as his crypt ghouls are. Now on the far right hand side, he does march up forward with his Ravenous, his 6 Crypt Horrors, and that draws him right in the middle of the line of fire from most of my war machines. However, Volkar, the Beast of Blutfold, flies over to the far right hand side, right to the middle of that river there, being protected from that forest there. So as you can see here, my friend is trying to go for my flank on my right hand side and trying to sweep across my army, and it's actually a pretty good plan because, as I said before, if you want to circumvent a dwarf gunline army, go for the flanks. Here's a close-up of his infantry forces taking cover behind terrain, so that way they don't get shot up to pieces. Same thing with the Calliope of Chaos there in the back. And here's a close-up of his Ravenous as well as Volkar, the Beast of Bloodfold. Now when it comes to the magic phase, he rolled 3 magic dice on that one, and so because that, he did try to cast I believe it's the one where you can summon up 50 points worth of infantry. He was going to try to call up zombies, but I managed to spell his magic phase, so not much really happened in the magic phase for him. Pretty lackluster for the most part. He has no range for shooting, and since nothing is engaged in close combat, that pretty much ends turn number 1 for the vampire counts. Alright, so that takes us to bottom of turn number 1 for the dwarves, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see, I don't move because I'm dwarves. There's no real reason for me to move at all. I just maintain my positions because most of my shooting elements are either move or fire, so to move them is a really bad idea for me, so that way I can shoot for them in the shooting phase. So I keep all my forces exactly where they're located at. We skip magic phase because I play a real man's army and we don't use magic, and we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, the Sorrows of Eld opens up with my cannonball directly against Volkar. I managed to put 5 wounds on that guy. Also take away his ability to regenerate, which is also kind of cool too, because my cannon has a Rune of Burning on it, so it has a flaming shot on that part. I was 1 wound away from actually killing Volkar, so that part's kind of sad, but at the same time though, I've also mitigated his Death Streak ability because he only gets 1 extra bonus for his 2d6 roll for that Death Streak ability, so I'll take what I can get at this point. And since the rest of his army is in cover, I really can't hit it. I concentrate fire with Clan Izmir, Clan Helheim, my Organ Gun, as well as my Remember. My Remember, actually, the shot goes way off, so because I wasn't able to hit anything with my Stone Thrower, but everything else pretty much just cut down that unit of Crypt Horrors down to only 2 more ghouls left. Now, normally my friend would have to take a panic check if he was playing any other army but Undead, but because these guys are Undead, they don't have to worry about panicking, and so they pretty much stand their ground. So, kudos to my friend Scream of the Emo. So with that being said, that pretty much ends up turn number 1 for the Dwarves. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Vampire counts. So we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Vampire counts. The first thing he does, he activates the Reliquary on his Mortis engine. Does give a +1 regen bonus to both the Mortis engine as well as to his Crypt Horrors. After that, he does move forward and start pressing his assault. The first thing that he does, he charges in Volkar, the Beast of Blutwald, flies him directly into my Decemberist of Winter's Past, and now my Organ Gun is directly into close combat, which is pretty scary because this thing is a monster. I do pass my terror check as well as my fear check, so that part's kind of nice. So when I get fight against him in close combat, hopefully my 3 crewmen can put the last wound onto Volkar and hopefully kill him. That's kind of the hope, but at the same time though, it is a monster and it's going to take a bunch of 6s for me to get to that point. For the rest of his army, he does try to charge in with his Ravenous against my Clan Helheim. Unfortunately for him though, he wasn't able to make the roll for make the charge distance, so he does move forward a couple of inches. I do manage to put a wound onto one of his Crypt Horrors when I stood in and fired with my Thunderers. At the same time, however, he just marches forward the rest of his forces upward because there's no real reason for him to charge yet. He's too far away. As you can see, he starts pushing his advance with the House of Bellfire right there in the middle, so that huge unit of ghouls is making their way towards my battle line. At the same time, he brings up his unit of zombies in support on the left-hand side. And then, of course, he brings his Calliope Chaos around the corner to lend some support that way as well. And that pretty much makes up the move phase for the Vampire counts. Here's a close-up of Volkar, the Beast of Blutwald, getting ready to put it towards my Decemberist of Winter's Past. And here's a close-up of his infantry forces marching across the battlefield, trying to make it to my main battle line. And finally, here's a close-up of his Ravenous as well as his Calliope Chaos. And like I said before, he does manage to give them a bonus to the regen using the aura, the Reliquary ability from the Mortis engine. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And my friend Scream of the Emo has a pretty good magic phase. He does use one of the Lore of Undeath spells that allows you to summon up monstrous infantry. As you can see here on the middle of the table, he summons up 3 more Crypt Horrors and puts them a couple inches away from my cannon, as well as from my my Thunderers, as well as my Dwarf Warriors, using it as a speed bump and trying to absorb some of the missile fire to preserve his troops. It doesn't cost him any points if he loses them in combat because these things are newly summoned, so it's just another speed bump I gotta go through before I engage his unit. He also manages to earn himself a Undead token as well for his caster, so that way he can use that for bonus points for summoning other things in the future in the battle report. The rest of his spells I was able to dispel, so that part was kind of nice as well. And since we're done with the with the magic phase, we skip shooting because Volkar was unable to cause any wounds with his Death Streak ability, so there is no real reason to go to the shooting phase, so that takes us directly to the combat phase. And unfortunately for me, Volkar killed one of my crewmen for my Decemberist as well. So he does win by 2, but since I have Gunner's Pride, my gunmen are, my gun crews are stubborn, so that they can only roll off on their unmodified leadership. So because of that, they stand their ground, they're not going anywhere. Unfortunately for me, I was unable to put the last wound onto Volkar, the Beast of Blutwald, so I still have to deal with that Terrorgeist attacking my right-hand flank. So with the Vampire counts turn over with, we go directly to the bottom of the turn for the Dwarves. So we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Dwarves, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see, I'm not moving in my forces because there is no real point for it. That way I can concentrate fire on my missile troops and hopefully destroy whatever is standing in my way. And in the shooting phase, I actually had a pretty, sad go of it for the shooting phase. I do try to open up with my Remember originally onto the Crypt Horrors. I do manage to hit them, but unfortunately when I rolled for my wound, I only rolled a 1 when the center template actually hit the Ravenous, but so because of that, there's no wounds there. Plus I failed to wound with my rest of the Blast template because of their 4-up regen, so that part was kind of sad. However, I did concentrate fire with Clan Helheim as well as Clan Izmir, and also opened up with a grape shot from my cannon directly into those 3 newly summoned Critors and managed to wipe those guys off the planet. So that part was kind of cool as well. Unfortunately, during close combat with the fight between the Decemberists as well as Volkar, not much really happened, just ended up being a stalemate. So because of that, they're still stuck there, so not much is happening on that side. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the vampire counts. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 3 for the vampire counts, and this photo is not taken after the movement phase. This one is happening with the reliquary ability being used on the Mortis engine. So the first thing he does, he rolls his d6 and actually manages to get a couple of units within range for his regen ability as well. Luckily for me, I didn't lose any dwarves from being hit with that aura, so because of that I'm pretty much okay. But he gives a 6-up regen to the crypt ghouls. He also gives +1 regen for the Critors again, so they're still regen 4, and he also managed to give a regen up to Volkar, the Beast of Blutfold. So that's what he ended up managing to do with the reliquary ability. During the movement phase, there has been just some dramatic movement. The first thing he does, he declares a charge with his Ravenous against Clan Helheim. Now, he does make the charge, but as he goes across the battlefield, Clan Helheim shoot those guys to pieces with their thunders. So because of that, that unit gets wiped off the planet before they even get to manage to close distance with Clan Helheim. He then also tries to declare a charge with his Crypt Ghouls against my Dwarf Warriors, but unfortunately for him, he failed his roll, so he only charges forward a couple of inches, just shy of actually hitting me. So that part was kind of sad for my opponent. At the same time, he marches up the Walking Dead of Samurai to the left-hand side, right to the middle of the village, starts putting some pressure onto my left-hand flank as well, which is going to be a problem because if I want to intercept those zombies, I'm going to have to move my Quarrelers, which means they won't be able to shoot, which is a bad thing because, you know, I'm a gunline list. Like I said before, my friend's going for the exploiting the weakness of a gunline list by attacking the flanks, and he's doing a pretty good job of doing that as well. So that part was pretty rough. Here's a close-up of the zombies from the Walking Dead of Samurai, putting pressure on my left-hand flank of my army. And here's a close-up of the Balefire Carnival, the Calliope Chaos, as well as Volkar still, you know, trying to make it towards my main battle lines. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, my friend Scream of the Emo actually has a pretty fantastic magic phase because he managed to get 12 magic dice on this one as well. He also managed to channel another one. I think he just ends up being 13 total dice is what he ends up having. So the first thing he does, he casts the large bubble version of Van Hel's Dance Macabre as well as Hellish Vigor. So because of that, all the units within his army pretty much reroll to wound as well as reroll to hit. So that part is absolutely terrifying. And of course the spell also manages to go towards his Crypt Ghouls as well, giving them the ability to reroll to hits as well as to reroll to wound, which is absolutely terrifying to actually see that happen. At the same time, he also casts a magical ability which allows him to, I think it's called Breath of Darkness, which allows him to bring back D3 +1 wounds for his zombie units. As you can see in the background there, there's some gravestone markers which are unit fillers as well as a zombie. Now the reason why they're back there is because my friend immediately casts another large spell for his army where he has to roll 24 or more in order for him to summon up a chariot worth 200 points, and he actually cast that spell to make it go off. And by doing so, he casts up and actually summons up another Mortis engine, was what he ended up doing for this one. So you can see here, this is my proxied Blood Coven Throne that I use for my undead army, but I'm going to my friend is going to use this for a what you call Mortis engine on this one. He puts it right behind my Clan Izmir, so that was absolutely terrifying. He actually had 2 undead dice counters because he did one when he summoned up the monstrous infantry in the first earlier round, and then he also put that Breath of Life ability as well. So he took the 20 extra points to make sure it's 220 points in order to get this Mortis engine on the table. And that's absolutely terrifying because that thing also has a Death Streak ability as well. However, not all things actually work out well for my opponent because he does miscast in order to make that spell go off, and he rolls a 1 for that one.
Klaatu, Marata,
which of course ends up being a catastrophic detonation when it ends up happening. So all the zombies that he summoned up when he actually brought that Breath of Life ability, he automatically loses, and he also loses 3 more zombies beyond that. And to make matters worse, when he rolls to see exactly what ends up happening for his level 4 Necromancer, he rolls a 1, so because of that, Sinister Jeffrey gets sucked directly into the warp and gets devoured by the Chaos Demons within. So my friend does lose his level 4 caster, but he has a level 1 caster with his General, as well as a level 2 caster with Creepy Timothy. So, you know, at the same time, it's kind of entertaining to see that happen. So during the shooting phase, my friend opens up with his Death Streak ability from Volkar the Beast of Blutfold and actually managed to kill one of my Dwarf crewmen, so that part was kind of sad. And to make things worse in the combat phase, Volkar the Beast of Bloodfold managed to destroy the rest of my organ guns, so that part was kind of sad too. Managed to lose the Decemberist of Winter's Past. And if you're wondering why 2 more Thunders are missing from Cloud Hellheim, I forgot to mention my opponent used the Calliope Chaos's Banshee Howl in order to put 2 wounds onto that unit as well. The newly summoned Mortis Engine was unable to cause any wounds onto my Quarlers, so, you know, silver lining and all that jazz. So with that being said, we go directly to the bottom of the turn for the Dwarves. So that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Dwarves, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. And as you can see, I've actually done some really dramatic movement. Sensing that this is a make or break moment, I decided to charge forward with Clan Roadsulker as well as with my troops against the Carnival of Balefire Carnival. So because I do make a successful charge, and my Dwarf Warriors crash directly into a huge horde of Crypt Horrors, so it'll be kind of interesting to see exactly how that works out. At the same time, I also maneuver my 2 flanking units to face their chargers, that way I can protect my back flank of my Dwarf Warriors. I turn Clan Izmir to intercept the newly summoned Mortis Engine on the left hand side. I also turn Clan Hellheim so that way they can directly take the full frontal charge from both the Calliope Chaos as well as from Volkar the Beast of Bloodfold. And at the same time, that kind of opens up my main lines for my 2 remaining War Machines to cut loose and to cause some problems for my opponent at the same time. Here's a close-up of Clan Izmir turning around to face the newly summoned Mortis Engine. I am kind of concerned about this one because I won't be able to shoot, so all I can really do is receive the charge. But like I said before, the main thing is I'm trying to protect my back flank of my Dwarf Warriors because that's where my general is located at, and that's where most of my killing power is located at as well. Here's also a close-up of Clan Roadsulker charging directly into the Balefire Carnival. Now, it's not ideal because these ghouls do have rerolls to hit as well as rerolls to wound, so does my opponent's general. But at the same time, though, if I don't take the offense at this point, I'm just going to get swarmed from all directions, and I'm going to have a losing fight ahead of me. So, yeah, it's not ideal to charge directly to fight against ghouls when they have these buffs, but, you know, at the same time, I can't stay where I'm at. So, henceforth, we got to see how the dice rolls. And finally, here's a close-up of Clan Hellheim getting ready to take on both the Calliope Chaos as well as Volkar the Beast of Bloodfold. I'm actually pretty confident about taking this on because Mortis Engines aren't very good in close combat, and Volkar only has 1 wound left, and that's assuming, of course, I don't shoot one of these guys off the table with my War Machine. So I'm really looking forward to bring the pain during the shooting phase. And speaking about the shooting phase, I open up first with the Rememberer. I actually have it target against the Beast of Bloodfold Volkar, so that way I can kill that Terrorgeist. Unfortunately for me, though, when I rolled the dice to scatter, I rolled a misfire, and when I rolled a d6 to see exactly what I got in misfire, I rolled a 1. So because of that, the Rememberer just explodes and kills all the entire crew members for that War Machine. So that part was pretty sad. At the same time, though, I still have a cannon, so I didn't activate the Sorrows of Eld to fire next. And when I roll the artillery die to see exactly where my cannonball fire goes through, I also roll a misfire for that one as well. And when I rolled a d6 in the black powder chart, I rolled a 1 on that one. So because of that, the cannon also exploded as well. So because of that, I lose both of my War Machines in the first opening rounds of the shooting phase. And I'm like, crap, because those are the only things I had left to shoot with, and they're totally destroyed because they got blown up from misfires. So that was horribly tragic for my army at this point. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase, and this absolutely was a bloodbath between my Dwarf Warriors as well as my opponent's Crypt Ghouls. In the end, I managed to lose 10 warriors in close combat. Just the number of poison attacks these guys were dishing out is absolutely horrible. At the same time, I also issued a challenge with my general Ivar Bodison against his general Marduk von Koss. Marduk von Koss decides to accept the challenge and they fight it out. Luckily for me, my opponent was unable to cause any wounds onto my general, so that part was kind of nice. And I managed to put 2 wounds onto him, so that part was pretty awesome as well. In the end, though, like I said, I lost 10 Dwarf Warriors, but my opponent lost, I think, 15? I think is what he ended up losing? No, not 15. He lost, let's see, 10... and then 8, so yeah, 18. End up losing 18 Crypt Ghouls by the time it was all said and done between the close combat. So, needless to say, I managed to win close combat. Unfortunately, my opponent is undead, so he doesn't have to worry about taking break tests. But the nice part is the difference between our combat scores ends up being casualties for his Crypt Ghouls. So as you can see in this photo, I pretty much bring down his army about by a third for his crypt ghouls, and so that's actually pretty good considering all the death and destruction I caused against this unit. I do lose a quarter of my dwarf warriors as a result of that, but my friend's turn is coming up next, and hopefully his magic phase will not be as good as last time, and so therefore his crypt ghouls will lose a lot of the buffs that they were receiving earlier. And that's pretty much the plan I'm kind of going with. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 4 for the vampire counts. Alright, so we go directly to the top of turn number 4 for the vampire counts, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. I think my friend rolled a 1, sorry, not rolled a 1, he rolled a Snake Eyes for his Reliquary ability for his Mortis engine, the Calliope of Chaos. I think he rolled like a 3 for his newly summoned Mortis engine, so because that no roll effects really took place for that. However, he does charge forward with his forces. He sends in the Calliope of Chaos directly into Clan Helheim. He also charged in directly forward with his Volkar, the Beast of Blutwald. When I stood in reaction to shoot against his charging forces, I decided to concentrate fire against Volkar. I managed to kill that Terrorgeist and managed to kill him, so that part was kind of nice. However, on the left-hand side, my Clan Izmir does get flanked by the Walking Dead of San Reme, as well as being charged forward from the newly summoned Mortis engine, so that part was kind of rough. And of course, the warriors, as well as the Crypt Ghouls, are still engaged in close combat. Here's a close-up of Clan Izmir being charged from the front by the newly summoned Mortis engine, as well as being hit from the flank by the Walking Dead of San Reme, so that is pretty tragic for my crossbowmen. And here's a close-up of my Dwarf Warriors of Clan Roadstalker still engaged with the Balefire Carnival, still engaged in close combat against each other. And here's a close-up of the Calliope of Chaos darting directly into Clan Helheim, the Fallen of the Dragonbacks. And that's going to be it's kind of working in my favor too, because that is only a Mortis engine. It's not really good for close combat, and I have pretty good Dwarf Warriors in that part. So with that being said, we go directly to the Magic phase. Magic phase was not good for my opponent because he rolled Snake Eyes, so because I would go to the shooting phase, and as you can see in this photo, he does manage to kill one of my Clan Izmir crossbowmen using his Death Shriek ability from his Mortis engine. And his general also managed to put 2 kills with his Death Shriek ability against my Dwarf Warriors, so that part was kind of sad as well. So with the Magic phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. So during the combat phase, if I remember correctly, he managed to kill 3 of my members of Clan Helheim, so that part was kind of sad. However, I was able to put 3 more wounds directly onto the Calliope of Chaos, and due to combat resolution, I was able to cause another wound onto him for the combat difference, thus killing the Calliope of Chaos. However, because it has a reliquary, when it dies, it explodes and it kills 4 more of my Dwarf Thunderers, so that part was kind of tragic for me. However, I do manage to pass my panic check with my Clan Helheim, so those guys managed to stand their ground as well. Close combat between Clan Roadstalker as well as the Balefire Carnival was absolutely brutal once again. I do manage to lose 8 warriors for my trouble, but I managed to kill, I think, 10 or 11, I think, after the combat resolution was done, everything else. I think I managed to kill 11 of his Crypt Ghouls as well, dropping down to just the 13 guys that he has left over in that unit. Also, combat between his general as well as mine. Marduk von Koss was unable to cause any wounds onto Ivar Bodison. Ivar Bodison, however, was able to put 1 wound onto that general as well, so that part was kind of cool as well. However, these 2 units are still engaged in close combat, so they'll need to fight again for another turn to see exactly what happens to them. In the end, the combat between Clan Izmir as well as the rest of the Walking Dead was actually pretty good for me. I actually managed to kill the Mortis engine, so that part was kind of nice. I also managed to kill a handful of those zombies at the same time. However, because I got charged from the front as well as from the flank, I do have to take a break test. I think I lose by 2 is what ended up happening. Unfortunately for me, when I rolled my dice to see if my Clan Izmir stand their ground or not, I rolled a 10 the first time around, so because of that, it goes past my leadership and my Dwarf Warriors have to break. My opponent, Scream of the Emo, does pursue what the Walking Dead of San Reme, and he manages to run down my Dwarf Colors and manages to kill them all to the last man, so that part was pretty rough, and losing my crosswoman is not good whatsoever. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Dwarves. And here's an overhead shot of the movement phase return to 4 for the Dwarves. What I decided to do is to march up Clan Helheim and kind of do like a wheel formation, so that way they're facing the right hand flank of the Balefire Carnival. My plan is to charge indirectly into the right hand flank of the ghouls during my next turn, so that way if they're still fighting out, I can get them in a pincer attack and hopefully destroy them that way as well, because if I manage to destroy that unit of crypt ghouls, I don't really have to worry about dealing with the Walking Dead of San Reme. I can just defeat my opponent that way and not have to worry about them too much. So with the move phase over with, we skip shooting because my shooting unit moved, so we go directly to the combat phase. And during the combat phase, the duel between Marduk von Koss as well as Ivar Bodison comes to an end with Ivar Bodison putting the last 2 wounds onto his general. So because that, his Strigoi Ghoul's King does die, which means now that all of his remaining units have to take leadership tests, and whatever leadership test values they fail by, they have to do a grumble check for all their units. Which takes us directly to the end of the game at that point, because my friend Scream the Emo was like, you know what, I'm done, because pretty much all of his forces will start crumbling at that point. So it ended up being victory for the Dwarves on this one. So that part's pretty awesome, because this game was really, really close and very, very brutal. So that being said, we're going to go directly to the after action report, because this battle report is now officially over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we claim for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 44, and it being a victory for yours truly. When it comes to my losses, I lost Clan Izmir the Vengeful Ones, the Rememberer, the Sorrows of Eld, as well as the Decembrists of Winters Past. For Scream of the Emo, he lost Marduk von Kost, Sinister Jeffrey, the Ravenous, Volkar the Beast of Bloodfold, as well as the Calliope of Chaos. In the end, this game was extremely brutal for me. My opponents are starting to wise up against fighting against my dwarf gun lines by going towards the flanks, and I'll keep on saying that over and over again. If anybody wants to pitch a fit that you're playing a dwarf gun line list, that's because your opponent needs to go for the flanks, and they're not creative enough in order to do that, alright? Because that is the weakness of a dwarf gun army list, because they can't maneuver quickly enough to mitigate those circumstances. So that's what my opponents did, and unfortunately for me, I failed again for that way because due to deployment. I didn't castle up on the table edge to defend one of my flanks. I relied too much upon the terrain to cover my flanks for the most part, and that ended up biting me pretty bad on that one as well. So that part was kind of rough. On a positive note, my general Ivar Bodison is unstoppable. He's got a -1 to hit against with his Rune of Parrying. He's got +2 toughness, +2 wounds, because he's on shield bearers. The only problem is that he's not very good at counterattacking. He's more of a tank build rather than a kill build. So because I'm thinking about actually switching up his weapon rune from the Rune of Parrying to the Rune of Might, so that way he gets twice as much strength against toughness 5 enemies and higher. So I'm planning on maybe changing that up a little bit to make it a little bit more kill worthy, because he has a pretty high weapon skill, so having a -1 to hit is not much of a difference already. So think about doing that. As a sad part, however, my War Machine's misfiring like that twice in a row for both my Grudge Thor and my cannon. That part was really, really painful to actually watch that to happen. And not to mention, my opponent's use of the Lore of Undeath was absolutely terrifying. The only thing that was really good for me was the fact that my opponent brought a Mortis engine on the table, because Mortis engines aren't very good in close combat. They're pretty good for shooting and everything else, but yeah, that was absolutely terrifying to see that happen. Same thing with those ghouls. When you buff up ghouls with Van Hel's Danse Macabre as well as Hellish Vigor, those guys are absolutely terrifying, especially if they're in a 50-man unit with the number of poison attacks those guys are throwing. It's absolutely terrifying to see the amount of destruction that was happening. And like I said, this was an extremely close game. It was too close for comfort for me because I came this close to actually losing it. And that kind of just shows you how smart of an opponent Scream of the Emo is with his tactics and how he tried to mitigate my shooting abilities. In the end, this was an awesome game against a great opponent, and I'm kind of hesitant to go back to fight against him because he almost beat me this time around. That's good for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, as well as blogger.com for the latest greatest news about our hobby. That's good for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. We'll catch you guys on the next one.